can't do me for a dime. Shake, walk, baby, all night long, knowing it don't mean a thing. When I come up Claiborne Avenue, yeah, it's good to be the king.
Check, check. Okay, oh my goodness, can we have another round of applause? So, one thing that we're doing today, because it's called Connect Beyond Festival, and I really hope that you have connected with individuals that you don't know, and connected with new connections that will go beyond these walls, beyond the third room. And I think it's extremely special to highlight the past, the present, and the future. And so I'm going to have a co-facilitator this evening, and I will also shout out a few other people a little bit later. But this individual is someone who I've known since he was in high school, and trust and believe, he has been absolutely amazing and gone way beyond just not doing the best in English class. It's okay, right? Because we're not always just a grade. So that is why it's so important to connect with individuals and truly get to know who they are beyond what they are on paper. Okay, so I'm going to introduce D'Angelo Elliot. He's been working with Slay the Mic, STM Multimedia for a couple of years. Some of it's like just asking and some of it's telling. Isn't that correct?
Most definitely. And I did get my high school diploma, by the way. Just want to let you know. And I speak the language fine.
Yes. But he's absolutely doing amazing things. Why don't you share a little bit about what you do currently?
Yeah, so right as of now, I'm a travel CNA. I've been doing that. I've been working in healthcare for about 5 years now. I have my license in 12 different states. So I work in long-term care specifically, but I've done a little bit of home health. I have my own healthcare agency, a daily basis healthcare LLC. I'm a content creator, so you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube at D-Lo on the daily. I played 2 seasons of overseas basketball in the Dominican Republic, so I have a little pro ball experience, and yeah, that's really it about me.
Awesome. We'll introduce a few others of the team a little bit throughout this time, but I know we're going to introduce someone else.
Yeah, so without further ado, the man of the hour, Mr. William Otis Henderson.
Matthew.
Matthew Otis Henderson. My apologies. Oh my gosh.
William, oh, that's a new one. I like that. I like that, though.
I'm not going to lie, that did not help my case as far as the English grade.
Okay. We listen, we don't judge.
Thank you.
So let's start off with a few questions. I mean, what a powerful documentary. And when I say connections and community, and I was having this conversation a little bit earlier about what is community? So maybe I'm just going to start by asking you, what is community to you?
That's a great question. First of all, thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. I really appreciate the Connect Beyond Festival for hosting the screening tonight. It is always amazing and also nerve-wracking, to sit in the back of a room and watch people ingest something that you have put your heart and soul and life into. So I do not take that lightly that you made the effort to come out tonight, so I appreciate that. What is community? It's interesting. I'll kind of like pivot to like the film a little bit because as they mentioned earlier at the intro of the film, I am not from New Orleans. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. So working on a film about a very, very important, meaningful, and special part of New Orleanian culture, as someone who didn't grow up there, didn't really experience Zulu growing up, my first Mardi Gras was Mardi Gras 2022 when I filmed it. For me, community is wherever your heart is. you know? And so for me, the way that I got so close to the individuals that were in the film to get some of the nuggets of the storytelling that you guys were able to witness tonight is being in community with not just the members of the Zulu Social Aid and Pleasure Club, but the community around. So there were so many trips where I went down and just without a camera, just to hang out. You know, just to sit with Terrence and his parents, you know, like getting to know them, to sit in the club, drinking all night long and buying drinks for everybody in the club, getting to know what this community meant to them. Because it was important to me as a filmmaker that, yes, I am making this film, you know, I'm the director of this film, but I wanted the voice that's communicating the themes and the importance of the film to come from those people who are rooted to the soil as like the individuals that you saw on the screen. So for me, you know, like community is not a physical space, you know. Community is wherever you are and wherever your heart follows you into those spaces. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but that's what I feel.
Yes, I love it. Thank you.
So I guess a good follow-up question would be, as far as the movie, it was very powerful. What was your inspiration for making such a film?
Yeah, great question. So originally, I was not actually the director of this film. You saw his name on screen. My producing partner in this is an incredible filmmaker and executive producer and director and actor, a gentleman named Fisher Stevens. And we had worked on a project back in, blanking on the year, it might be like 2014, 2015. It was a climate change film that he was working on that I was one of the camera operators on, and we really had a fun time working on that project. And we're always looking for a project to work on together again. And so shortly after Mardi Gras of 2020, he read this article about the Zulu Social Aid and Pleasure Club that was written in the New York Times by this incredible journalist named Linda Villarosa. And he had just finished making a film in New Orleans, and he was like, hey, Matt, like, he gave me a call, and he said, hey, I just read this article. I'm going to send it to you. You should read it. I just finished this film. I have an amazing base and connections within New Orleans. And mind you, this is probably May of 2020, you know, so coming up on the first summer of the pandemic. He was like, you know, do you want to do a little research and get in a car and drive with me from New York to New Orleans and like start to make this film? And I was like sitting at home, you know, I'm a filmmaker, I'm always looking to create, and, you know, agreed. And we kind of started by speaking on Zoom with a lot of the members of the community, a lot of the members in the Zulu Club, some of the members that you saw on screen for the film, and just started first listening. You know, like there was what we read in the article, there was the research that I was able to do about the club and its origins and, you know, what went down for Mardi Gras 2020 and the super spreader event that it became, you know. So that's one part of it, you know, but then there's the experience of the people, of the amazing characters that are in the film. And so we just listened, you know, and then we got in the car, we drove straight to New Orleans, like there was three of us. One person drove, one person talked to the person that was driving, and one person slept in the back. And so 25 hours, we got to New Orleans. We spent about a day and a half there, about 2 days there on that first trip. And we shot 16 interviews in that 2-day period. And I'm not talking about like 20-minute or 30-minute interviews. Some of the interviews were an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours long, really in-depth interviews with some of the individuals, and most of the interviews that you guys saw tonight were actually from that very first trip. And so it kind of like established the basis of our storytelling, and it was a really interesting time because not only is it, you know, so this is now June of 2020, you know, so not only is it the first summer of the pandemic, it was also a few months after George Floyd was murdered, you know, so there was a palpable desire from our characters to share of their experience during that time. So there was not an interview that we conducted that one of the members of the film crew didn't leave there just like teary-eyed, and not out of pity or anything like that, but just there was so much resonance with what was going on that we knew that there was a bigger film here. So fortunately, we were able to raise the money and continue to tell the story.
So as a director, as a creator, visionary, you know, it is absolutely beautiful, the final product, but what were some challenges that you had to face, not only listening to the stories, but also putting together something so powerful as this?
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges, and the two members of the film team that joined as we were not wrapping up the film, but came in like kind of the third and fourth quarter of making this film, are actually individuals from Asheville that are directly connected to Connect Beyond, Zach Kilberg and Iz Webb. So some of the challenges that we experienced was this is my directorial debut for a documentary. So this is my first film. I made a lot of mistakes. I spent a lot of money in places that I probably shouldn't have. Chased storylines that seemed important to me at the time, and it's not that they weren't important, but really wasn't servicing the fullness of the film. So there was a lot of that. But also I had an amazing team around me that would lead and guide when I would get off track. I've spent a lot of years in this industry, almost 18 years, doing this work. And I sat in an interview once with this individual. His name is D.A. Pennebaker, and he is kind of like, he's given the credit of kind of coming up with the verite style of documentary filmmaking, which is, kind of some of what you saw in the film here tonight. And, the person who was interviewing him asked, how did you come up with this style, to capture life as it actually is? And he kind of thought about it for a second. He's probably been asked this question a million times over the course of his amazing career. And he said, whenever I approach a project, I shoot what I find, not what I expected to find. And it's something that just stuck with me, like this idea of, like I mentioned before, you do your research, you come up with the treatment, like you start to plot out what you think your film is about. And then Tim and I, we were speaking about this just yesterday, Tim Hernandez, who gave an amazing talk a little earlier, and you have this idea of what you want this piece of art to be, and then the art tells you what it needs to be as you're making the film. So that was one of the biggest challenges for me, and especially with this film, I come from the background of the camera department in film and television, and I shot good majority of the film. Probably about 90% of what you saw tonight are images that I actually shot as well. So you fall in love with images and scenes because you were the one who lensed it. You were the one who created these images, and so there are things that I didn't want to let go of because I was like, that shot is goddamn beautiful. Like, what do you mean we're gonna cut that out the film, So it was tough in some instances to let some things go, but when you are led by the work and you let the work tell you what the next scene is and what characters are important and what storylines and threads are important, it makes the work that much stronger. So as many things as I messed up during the course of filmmaking, we did a lot right. And it's not me doing it all right. There was an amazing team that was around me of producers and associate producers and 3 incredible editors that worked on this project. So, it's a part of that collaboration, that produced the work that you saw tonight.
So I like that you spoke on not wanting to let go of a certain shot or a scene. So looking back on this film, which scene did you find most powerful?
Oh yeah, great question, thank you. So the interview with Terrence on the tractor, where he kind of has that monologue in kind of the last third of the film there. So Terrence originally, so when we started the process of looking into making this film, that first trip that we took down, we went down to New Orleans and spent 2 days down there. Terrence was kind of what we call in our industry like a local fixer. He's an individual who knows about the region that we're going in. He's a member of the club. He was introducing us to a lot of the characters that you saw in the film, like Asali and Takesha, amazing anchors of the storytelling and just incredible individuals and activists that are doing amazing work in New Orleans. So he was kind of the mover and the shaker. You need to talk to this person. You need to go interview Mr. George Rainey. You got to go sit down with Rodney Mason Jr. And was able to get us access into the club off the strength of his name. And so he was just helping us through the process, both in pre-production and then we went down there for those 2 days, and he was present for all of those interviews that you saw in the film. And on that second day, right before we were getting ready to get in the car and drive back to New York, we were like, yo, Terrence, man, we should sit down and spend some time with you and talk to you about your experience and your experience as a Zulu member and what you experienced during COVID and your experience as a black man in America. And that interview on the tractor was the last of the 16 interviews that we did. And it's interesting because, you asked, scenes that are hard to let go. That scene actually, I'll call it a scene, wasn't in the film until we finished this film right before South by Southwest of 2024. That's where we premiered the film. And that scene wasn't in the film until about 2 to 3 months prior to that. Because the direction that the film was going, it didn't quite seem like that scene was fitting. And then we ended up getting some new editors onto the project and just started to kind of rework the structure and realized that that was the emotional core of the film. And once we identified that, all the other pieces just started to fall into place, you know? So it's one of my, to this day, one of my favorite scenes. I still get emotional every single time I watch it because that's not a side of, black men that we normally see here on screen. And, you know, how you see the evolution of Terrence's character through the film. He is not a perfect character. None of us are, you know? What I take away from Terrence on screen is he is showing his humanity, his vulnerability, his inconsistencies, his unsurety, if that's even a word, you know, like throughout the film. And to me, it was so resonant because that's how I feel every single day of my life, you know? So that's my absolute favorite moment of the film, although there are so many others, especially because I shot it. Like all of the Mardi Gras sequence at the end of the film, I shot Mardi Gras 2 consecutive years in a row, and the second year is when I actually rode on the first year I walked the entire route, shooting the route with Zulu as they were going through, and then Mardi Gras is a little bit of a cheat. I also shot Mardi Gras 2023 and included it saying it was Mardi Gras 22, but you know, it's a filmmaker's license. But so Mardi Gras 2023, I rode on the float with Zulu, and once I saw that perspective, looking down on the people that are on that 7.2 mile road, and especially when, or route I should say, especially getting towards the end of the route where they're going through the historically black neighborhoods, like you see the people's response to Zulu, and not just the black people of New Orleans, but also the white people, the native New Orleanians and the tourists. You know, there is such an amazing power and magnetism that this club holds, not just in New Orleans, but around the world, that really changed and transformed my perspective on the whole conversation.
So it's no secret that the current administration is actively trying to erase what culture is, and this is a story about celebration, but also pain and struggle. So when we talk about trying to erase culture, how do you see culture continuing despite efforts to erase it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible burden, but also privilege of any artist, because I do think that's part of our job, is the preservation and furthering of culture. You know, we're furthering it in this moment by showing you a film, you know, a film that when I started, I knew very little about, you know, the history of New Orleans, the history of black folks in New Orleans. Like, one of the most amazing things to me was the fact that some of these black folks in the film can trace their lineage back 6, 7, 8, 9 generations. For a black person in America, that is incredible. Like, it's absolutely incredible. So those little moments where we're able to share instances like that, where the filmmakers are learning and we're also able to present that to audiences as something else, that is a way to not only preserve culture, but also communicate it, you know? And that's what brings us closer, right? When we learn more about one another, and this is so cliche, but the more and more, at least the hope, is that the more and more we learn about one another, we see that there are more similarities than differences, where we can not see someone as other, but see them as who they are, you know, a fellow human being. So I think it's an amazing opportunity as filmmakers to continue to tell these stories. You know, I spoke to an amazing group of individuals from the Black Student Union earlier today, and you know, the desire to express their blackness and to understand their blackness and to communicate their blackness, not just to themselves, but to their communities and those communities that are connected to their community, that's furthering and continuing culture, so.
Speaking about what blackness means to you and the BSU students that you spoke to, I feel like one of the most, or as a film as powerful as this one had a lot of quotables. One scene that stuck out to me in particular were the cut scenes when the old guys, the former Zulu members, were speaking in the King's Alley, and I believe one of them spoke about how, you know, the idea of the Zulu king is like make-believe to them, but another one chimed in and said, it's our reality. So how does that speak to like the cultural aspect of black people? How some things from other people from the outside looking in doesn't seem like a big deal to them, but to us, it's a part of our culture.
No,
So what does culture mean to you, I guess, in a
amazing
sense?
question. Yeah. No, I think, unfortunately, like, and it's something I was actually praying before I came up, that not my words, but their words come forward. You know, like Mr. Pollard says it best. Mr. Pollard was in the scene where it was the Zulu members kind of around in the conference room around the table, and he's telling the story about, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name, about, I forget. He was telling a story about that individual who was a mechanic, you know, and when he got on one of the Zulu committees, he started carrying a briefcase. And that briefcase was empty, but carrying the briefcase, because he was elected to be on this commission or committee for the Zulu Social Aid and Pleasure Club, it gave him a sense of importance as a black man. You know, Jacques has that great line that, you know, when they're talking about the Mardi Gras Kings, that, you know, that when Zulu first started, you know, black people couldn't be the sheriff, they couldn't be doctors, they couldn't be lawyers, they couldn't even be the dog catchers in their own communities, in their own city, but they can be the king of Zulu. Like, when he said that, I was just like, I looked behind the camera, I was like, man, did he just say that? I was like, you know, because, like, you think about that. You go to a place, and it's a similar feeling when I first started going and hanging out in the club, and I walk into the club, everybody, most of the people in the club don't even know my name. They call me either Cameraman or Brooklyn. Those are the two names I got in the club.
Not so William.
Exactly. And so, like, I go in there, and I remember, never forget the first time I went into the club. It was without a camera, it was with Terrence, and we were just gonna go hang out. And first of all, the drinks, the beers are like $2 in the club, you know? Like, it's wild. So you go down there and you hang out, and you're just listening to the stories, to these individuals talking, like, in the alley, one of the individuals was like, you know, my dad joined Zulu in 1965, you know, like, or he had been a member since 1965, and his dad was a member of Zulu before that. Like, this organization gives these individuals, these men, these black men, a sense of purpose, you know, like, because they can, the beautiful thing about Zulu, and they talk about it, don't necessarily talk about it in the film, but it was part of the conversation, like, you know, members of Zulu are called, there used to be a sign over the Zulu Club, and if I can remember correctly, it was something like, Zulu men come from all walks of life, from, it's something like from the pulpit to the oh man, I'm trying to remember it exactly, but it's something like from the boardroom to the pulpit to the jails, you know? It's like, they call Zulu an every man's club, you know, because anybody can walk into those doors, and it was what I experienced when I walked in there. You walk in those doors, and you just feel supported, you feel loved, you feel heard, you feel like you don't have to be someone else when you walk into that space, and that's often what black people, black men have to do in this world, where you're one person with your friends, you're somebody else on your job, you're somebody else with your boy, you know, so it's this idea of switching up who you are, and people don't do that as Zulu. You know, so I don't know if I answered your question, man. Sometimes I just be talking.
That was a perfect response.
So we have a few more questions, and then we're going to open up to the crowd. So I do want to kind of take a step back from the film, from the documentary, and talk about you. And if you, what did you want to be when you were younger? Like, do you remember what you wanted to do when you grew up?
I don't know what the answer to that question is. I don't remember, like, growing up, I mean, there was a point in my life where I wanted, you know, like little kids, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be this, but, like, I don't remember ever latching on to something and being like, oh, that's the thing that I want to do. I really struggled in school, you know, played sports for a while and really enjoyed that, but, like, never really found, like, what my thing was. And it wasn't until, I told this story to somebody earlier, like, where, you know, I was graduating high school, and I was telling my mom, like, I want to go to travel, and can I go to Europe and just backpack around and hang out? She was like, no. She was like, you're going to go to college, and she was like, you're going to pay for it, too. I said, what? So I got a job as a janitor at a local school, and it took me went to a city school in New York, and it took me 5 years to get out of there, but I got out of there. And it was my sophomore year. I had some friends that were going to NYU, and they were part of the film school. And I was really good with, like, construction and stuff like that, and a friend of mine was building this bank vault for this NYU thesis film, and she was like, it has to be like this working bank vault with safe deposit boxes and all this stuff. We have 2 weeks to build it. Like, are you interested? They were building it upstate New York. She was like, you're interested in coming out and building it? And she was cute, so I was like, yeah, I'll come out there and build this bank vault with you. And so went up there and we built this vault, and it was amazing. It was a crew of like 8 of us that I now know are set construction workers, and we built this realistic working bank vault in this soundstage upstate New York. And then I hung out for a couple days when the film crew came and started to work. And everybody grows up, not everybody, most people grow up watching films and movies and TV shows, but I never really thought about what went into the process of creating like these things. And when I saw this crew of 40 individuals descend on this set that we built and start to work, and I was listening to the communication and the coordination that was involved, I was like, yo, this is what I want to do. And so I went back to my school, I declared a film and media major, and I actually I went to NYU, and I would just talk to some of my friends' professors and be like, hey, I'm a film student at Hunter College, like, do you mind if I sit in your class? And 90% of them said yes. So I also got a free NYU education, they didn't have to pay for it, and just fell in love with the art form, and so it really transformed who I am, in an amazing way. So yeah.
So are there any other projects, big or small, that the people can look out for coming up, tied to Mr. Matthew Otis Henderson?
Yeah, I am in an interesting season right now where, this film came out in the top of 2024, and when this film was done, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Making a film is hard. It really is. It is taxing time-wise, mentally, like, financially, like making a documentary film. It's really tough. And I've taken a bit of a break. I do have a full-time job as a producer at a documentary production company, and we produce a ton of like different documentaries. Some of them are on HBO, some of them are on Apple. And if you'd like to know more about those, you can come up to me afterwards and we can speak about that for sure. But I'm getting back into the place where it's twofold. Like, I definitely want to produce or direct, I should say, another film. Not sure exactly what that is yet, but I know the next film that I work on. I loved making this film, and it taught me so much about myself as a filmmaker and as a person. But I want to tell a film that's a little bit more personal to my experience. I was able to be a part of this documentary and help tell the story of some amazing friends who are now friends. I talk to Terrence all the time. And so I was able to help tell their story. But my next film, I want to tell my story. And I don't know what that looks like just yet. And then also I am really excited about directing a narrative film, like not a documentary film, but a narrative film. And I feel like my first film, I need to write the script for, and I've been talking about doing it for years, and I think I just need to buckle down and do it. But yeah, so you will see my name again, for sure.
That's amazing. And I just have to say, there were so many different intersections during this film that I kind of really want to touch on quickly before we open it up. But it's about health, it's about proximity to location and being in certain spaces. So can you kind of talk about all of the types of themes that came out in this film?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a lot. And I sit there in the back and I'm even taking notes as I'm watching the film, like, we got to shorten this and cut that and do this. Yes, there are a lot of themes that we discuss in the film, and what we tried to do is, and a part of the storytelling that some of the individuals that were around me during the course of making this film, including Fisher Stevens, helped me navigate the I am very much bright light, that's interesting, let's follow that. And he was always like, it's about your characters, follow your characters, stay with your characters will guide you. And so when we storyboard this film and like have our index cards up in the room, and like for me and for the editors and the additional producers, if it wasn't connected to Terrence, Zulu, or Mardi Gras that's associated with Zulu, it's not a part of our storytelling. So what we tried to do in discussing The Claiborne corridor, the destruction of the Claiborne corridor with with bringing in the freeway. What we tried to do in talking about, Cancer Alley and Terrence's struggle of growing, wanting to raise his family in a good middle class life, but having to make sacrifices because where he's able to do that is in a place where he has 3 petrochemical plants around by him. What we tried to do in discussing, the disparities, not that don't just exist in healthcare, but also in economics, we tried to always tie those back to Zulu, and it wasn't hard to make those ties because Zulu is so central to Black life in New Orleans. So that was part of the thought process of using those pillars of these social inequities and ills that face the Black community and how they tie back into either our main character or the club. So I think it's tough because especially with your first film, you want to say everything. You want to shout everything. And when my editor, the second editor of the film, we have 3 editors on the film, Halil Ifrat, he's this 55, he's 58 years old now, Israeli dude, and cool dude, really cool guy. And he was like, your film doesn't always have to shout. There are moments where you can say more with less, And so part of the work that we did kind of in the second iteration of this film is because pretty much in earlier iterations of the film, we just had wall-to-wall talking. What we tried to build in is some moments of reflection, whether that was through music or whether that was through visuals, to allow you, the audience, to be the editors of the film, instead of us always presenting something to you and saying, this is important, look at this now. We tried to build in more moments where we give you a beat and a breath to take in what you just saw. Because that Terrence's monologue on the tractor is heavy. The film could have ended right there, and let people think, but we have to go somewhere else with the storytelling of the film. So it's like building in the pacing and the breath in those areas as we're discussing these themes throughout the film is something that's difficult but important.
That was great. Let's give a round of applause for Matthew one time, guys.
And thank you guys. These questions are dope. I really appreciate the conversation. It's really great. Thank you.
I absolutely love it.
Okay, so I guess now we're gonna open up questions to the crowd. I see we have one back here.
Thank you. I think, where do I start? I'll start with, we don't explicitly say in the film that this is a men's only club. And it's interesting because from a storytelling perspective, like in earlier versions of the film, we wanted to talk about the fact that there are other crews and Zulu is not the only Black crew and that there are also women's crews also. And so actually Dr. Takesha, who is the CEO of New Orleans East Hospital, she is the co-founder of the largest female parading crew, the Mystic Crew of Femme Fatale, who are really, really dope, and like in a much shorter time than Zulu, like grown and become like one of the most amazing crews when they ride during the Mardi Gras season. And so we wanted to talk about the Mystic Crew of Femme Fatale. And you actually see there is a beautiful shot of them. They preceded the Zulu float. Some of the femme fatales, and so the camera's like on top of the float, and you see them beautifully adorned in their red and black on Mardi Gras Day. But I feel like it would have taken us too far afield from staying with, again, Terrence, our main character, the Zulu Club, or Mardi Gras specifically, or that's Mardi Gras that's connected to Zulu. So we made a choice as filmmakers to not talk about that. It's interesting because I feel like there could be another doc that is just about the Mystic Crew Femme Fatales and or about the geography and landscape of Mardi Gras crews in general. But just for the purposes of our film, we decided to not tackle it. Zulu as a space that is exclusively for black men. The thing I like about the Zulu Club is that for most of the days during the week that it's open 7 days a week, but truly the club is closed on Monday, but usually there's always somebody at the Zulu Club. And on Thursday nights, they actually open it up to the community. So when the club is normally open, only members of Zulu and or special guests can come that are men on those days. But on Thursday, the entire community comes to Zulu. And it really is beautiful, so it allows people to experience some of the love and beauty that is the Zulu Club, because the thing about the Zulu Club is they're not just an organization that rides just on Mardi Gras Day. They are throughout the year doing stuff for their communities and for the families of the club, because it is, as its original intent, a benevolent association. So it's cool for people to be able to experience that, what these men experience at the Zulu Club on those Thursdays, but to have a space that is exclusively for these black men, where they can be as vulnerable as they need to, and where they can be themselves, and where they don't have to worry about how the world or even their families or even their closest friends think about them. They can just go to this place and be them. And I see that when I'm hanging out at the club. These guys come directly after work in their sanitation outfits, and there are members of Congress, the Louisiana Congress. There are state senators that are members of the club. There was an individual, Cedric Richmond, who was a part of President Biden's advisory team, was a member of the Zulu Club. And these guys can go there, and they don't have to worry about being petitioned by people asking them questions or trying to curry favor. They can just be one of the guys. And to have that as a man and as a black man is extremely important, because you get the level of vulnerability. Even though that interview with Terrence on the tractor didn't take place in the club, he felt the safety in that environment to speak as he did in the film. Because of that, the Zulu Club is an extension of not just those four walls within the club, but when Zulu is around in these different spaces, they feel that safety and that freedom and that level of, I guess safety is really the word that I would use. That's an important word to use for a black man. So I think I tried to answer your question. Yeah, thank you.
Right here in the middle row.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it challenged the filmmaking team in dealing with this, because the most important thing for me is I did not want my perspective as a black man that grew up in Brooklyn, New York, not in the culture of not even just New Orleans, but in the South, to come and show you, the audience, this is what I feel about this thing. And that's why the only people that speak in this film are native New Orleanians, people who are connected to not just the club, but also to the soil, And so the interesting thing about the blackface conversation is, and we shot so much. I mean, I shot probably, I can't even imagine how many hours and terabytes of footage I shot for this film. But there was a whole segment of the film, you asked the question about, things that, are no longer in the film. It never really quite made it into any of our cuts, but they were just kind of like these little subplots that we would cut, is when we would talk to native New Orleanians about blackface. And there were so many of them who were like, blackface, Zulu wearing blackface? We never considered that's blackface? You think that's blackface? That was always the conversation, because what you have to understand, and we didn't really tackle it in the film, and I'm kicking myself for doing it, because I think we could have done it smartly and concisely, is to talk about what Mardi Gras actually is. It is a day of magical realism where there's a suspension of reality, where the mayor of New Orleans, LaToya didn't do it, Mayor Cantrell, didn't do it like, this is not who I'm talking about when I say this, but when the mayor of New Orleans can walk around in a tutu, with a wig and with all these like crazy adornments, and it's totally fine for that day, it is this social inversion is actually the term I was looking at before, where the king can be a pauper and the pauper can be a king on that day. So all of that is wrapped up into the magic of what the Mardi Gras season is, because again, it's not just one day, it's an entire season in New Orleans. So when native New Orleanians think about Mardi Gras and they think about Zulu and they think about black makeup, as they refer to it, they don't see it as coming from the minstrel tradition, because as you heard the Zulu members in the film talk about it, they're like, this is the tradition that our ancestors started, and we are carrying that on because they were not allowed to properly mask because of fear that they would go into white crews and white balls and rape the white women. That's actually why they were not allowed to put on masks on Mardi Gras. So they said, okay, we can't do this. We still want to participate in this revelry, so we're going to paint our faces, So it's an interesting conversation, and what we didn't want to do, and I was trying so hard not to do this, is to just spark the conversation and have the conversation just for the sake of the film, if it wasn't an actual conversation that was happening. So again, this is not something that's included in the film, but Michael Quest Moore, the poet and activist that's in the film, he and his organization that were part of Take 'em Down NOLA, along with Chuck Perkins, to remove the Confederate iconography from New Orleans. Right after that successful campaign, they then turned on, I don't want to say it like that, they then started a campaign against Zulu to remove the blackface, because they're, like Chuck says, if we're going to remove all this iconography of white supremacy, then why would we not challenge our own people to do the same? So that happened. It was very brief. The backlash against them was great because of how beloved and Zulu is. And regardless of how I felt as a filmmaker about it, I didn't want to imprint my fingerprint on that conversation, because I have nothing to do with it. I have thoughts about it, but it's not my conversation to have. And that's why, thank you for mentioning the fact that this film is complicated, because life is complicated. I hate films, whether it be documentary or narratives, that try to tie things up in neat little bows at the end and be like, everything is great, right? Yay! That's not life. So Terrence's conflicted nature around the conversation of blackface. The individuals who are like, blackface today, we're never changing, to a beautiful statement that Mr. Rainey had at the end of the film, who passed away not long after we interviewed him, where he says, I'm confused myself. I love this practice. I hope it doesn't change, but maybe one day it will. So that's the complicated nature of this conversation.
So I know there's so many different hands. I'm going to try to get to the last three. So EJ, I do see some hands out there. So, yep.
And what was that last part? Oh, how can you see them? Yeah, sure. Yeah, so separating this work from like my 9 to 5, and my 9 to 5 as a producer, like the company that I work with produces both long form documentary series and also documentary shorts of recent. And it's kind of a different distribution model because like post-pandemic and post-actor strike and even in the current environment, the film industry is really we're having a lot of trouble, getting back to what it was. And like I know so many individuals who haven't worked in so long. And so because distributors are scared to present truth sometimes, they're more concerned with the bottom line than they are with telling meaningful stories sometimes. A lot of filmmakers are having to turn to different avenues to distribute their films. So like the company that I'm working for, they actually release a lot of their films for free on YouTube just so people can see them. And so we won an Emmy for a film that we produced last year about a survivor of the Hiroshima bombing. And they distributed the film, they produced the film, financed the film on their own, distributed it on their own, submitted it for Emmy consideration as not a part of a normal distribution model through a streamer, and we're able to win an Emmy off of it. So I think it just speaks to the fact that like storytelling is important and it's wanted, and it's the charge of filmmakers now to figure out diverse methods to get more films in front of individuals who want to see more stories. So. So everything I said about the distributors just
Okay.
like literally last week. Yeah.
Oh, that's huge.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Zach. And that's Zach, an executive producer on the film.
All right, so I know that we have rock, paper, scissors, shoot. But I know we have a few more minutes because we want to get this party going, but let's go ahead and have this young person here start the question off, and we'll see where we land.
Really moved me specifically, you said? Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna be working with you one day. Yeah, that moved me. There were so many. I'm a very emotional individual. Like, I love a good cry. I ain't afraid of a good cry. And so that moved me specifically. Mardi Gras Day 2023, when I was riding on the float, the last shot of the film are all those hands that are reaching up, trying to get a Zulu throw, a coconut, a bead, a cigar, a football, whatever it might be. And I had never seen anything like that in my life before. And I have seen a lot of things, as a result of my life, my travels for film. And seeing that after spending, at that point, 3 years working on this film, it was really impactful and emotional. And so it wasn't just that moment, and especially because that moment with those hands up takes place underneath the Claiborne corridor, where the highway was run through the Treme and destroyed the black neighborhoods and businesses. And to see us go back and reclaim that space and Zulu come alongside their community and continue to support that effort was meaningful. So like I got the camera, I operate out of a viewfinder all the time, and I'm just bawling. So there were a lot of really great moments.
Amazing. All right, last one. We're done. Yep. You go for it.
Definitely happened over time, and then there were moments where when they saw my consistency and the fact that I wasn't going there to exploit, to condemn, to preach to, where I would just go listen, and sometimes I'd film. And I'd go there listening more times than I would film, where they saw that, okay, this dude is all right. We'll let him keep coming back. But actually, before I was even able to film inside the Zulu Club, I had to have a meeting with the Zulu Board of Directors and the membership. And that was a scary meeting to have, where I had to present to them what my view of the film was and what I was trying to produce alongside with them. And not only did the board of directors have to agree to it, they actually brought it to the membership, the 800 plus members of Zulu, and had them vote on whether they wanted this to go through. So that was before I set foot in the Zulu Club to film. We had to do that in the beginning. And it was even more difficult because it was, again, top of the pandemic, and so I had to do it all on Zoom. So there's no in-person interaction where I can put a hand on somebody's shoulder and they can see and feel me. So it was all through a computer screen. So and I think that's one of the most important parts of the documentary process, that oftentimes, because of distribution models, you don't have the time to spend the time with the people, the spaces, the individuals that you're working on these films with. But for me, it was so important. So much of the money that I spent kind of wrongly in the beginning of the film was just, hey, I'm going to fly to New Orleans and just hang out, But it helped produce and foster the relationships that made the film possible. So I think it's an important part of the process.
All right. Well, I have enjoyed sitting down with you and having this conversation. And I know that I'm kind of sitting over here, just two black men over here having this conversation. What advice would you give him and vice versa?
Oh, what advice would I give him? Yeah. I don't even know if I'm in the position to give this man advice. I mean, it seems like he's already full of wisdom and knowledge, and just watching this film alone, I've gotten to learn kind of about you as a person, and just having that conversation with you earlier. But I would just simply say, just keep going. Just keep going. You have a great head on your shoulders. Just keep going.
I appreciate that. I mean, I am, and I think I was talking to Jessica after we had the dinner. I thought it was lunch, but it was a dinner meeting where we met for the first time. We were kind of having an amazing conversation. And what helps me and forces me and pushes me to keep going is like conversations like we had earlier, and like hearing all the things that you and the other members of BSU are doing, as well as Ethiopia and Ms. Dawn and Mr. Martin and Elizabeth, having conversations with you guys and like pushing us to be more of what we already are. And so I am inspired by your dedication and your hard work. I mean, you are doing so much. How old are you?
I'm 25.
I was not doing as much as this guy is doing at 25 years old, I'll tell you that. So I echo your advice that you gave me right back at you to keep going, but also remember, we have such a tremendous responsibility as black men in this world to not only, how do I say this? To not only succeed because we have to, but we have to model that success for those who are younger and older than us. So I praise the work that you've done, and I charge you to continue to do that work because it's needed. So, yeah, bro. And Jessica, thank you so much for this opportunity. This is absolutely incredible. Thank you.
Can we give another round of applause? Oh my goodness. With Matthew O. Henderson. So the party does not stop. We definitely went a little bit later. We got Mike Martinez that's about to bring the music. And then Connect Beyond does not stop, because tomorrow there is a full day of programming. So please make sure that you go check to see the lineup right outside. You can kind of see it on that amazing TV board. And then I do want to just shout out amazing Jessica for the work that she's been doing. And creating space and putting us in the room, all right? So don't go anywhere, because we got some music coming on now.